Hey, it's Mr. Schwartell here, and I'm going to talk a little bit about measurement today and converting measurement. I know that we've already had our test, but moving forward, we'll have district assessments on it and obviously the milestones, so it is never too late to grasp what's happening. So there's a couple of things that we want to pay attention to in measurement, and I'm going to just use this paper to cover up the bottom right now because I don't want us to focus too much on too many things at once. So if they're starting with a larger unit and they are converting or moving into a smaller unit, they need to multiply, right? So what that would look like is they're being asked to convert a number of feet to inches, right? And don't worry, there'll be a couple of examples in a second. Now, if they're moving from a smaller unit to a larger unit, they're going to divide, right? And so for an example, that would be inches to feet, right? So let's take a look at some examples and see if we can't go ahead and understand a little bit better. So let's say we're trying to take 5.5 tons and convert it to pounds. Right, so the first thing that they should do is they have this handy little conversion chart. They don't need to memorize any of the conversions, that's not the standard, but they just need to know how to use them. The first thing that they're going to want to do is think about how many pounds 1 ton is. So if we look on here, we see 1 ton equals 2,000 pounds. And it helps to write it like this, and you'll see in a second. So we know that if there's 2,000 pounds in 1 ton, tons are larger than pounds. That means we are moving from a larger unit to a smaller, which means we need to multiply, right? So I have them write it like this, and it helps like this because you can now circle here and see your multiplication equation, right? So since they're moving from a larger to a smaller, they need to multiply, and their multiplication equation is going to be 5.5 times 2,000. Now, another way that they can write this fraction, if it's something that they're more comfortable with, if they realize that this fraction is half, can be turned into a decimal, they can also write it as 5 5/10 times 2,000. It's really just what your student or what you are more comfortable with, right? So let's just take it like this. We know that 2,000 times 5 is going to equal 10,000, right? And 2,000 times 1/2, or 0.5, whichever you would like to use, is 1,000, right? So all they need to do now is add these two together, and they have their answer, which is 11,000, and we're going to come back up here, 11,000 pounds, right? So let's say, for example, that is moving from a larger unit to a smaller unit. And we're just going to go ahead and we'll use the same problem, and we'll just flip it around to see how we can do a smaller unit to a larger. All right, so we'll have in this example 11,000 pounds, and we want to move back to tons, right? Again, use your conversion chart, and we see that again 2,000 pounds equals 1 ton. Okay, and have them line up the measurements under each other, because this will really help as well. So This time we are going to move from a smaller to a larger unit, which means we're dividing, right? We're moving from pounds to tons. Now, instead of circling it kitty corner or diagonal to find out our division problem, all we have to do here is actually circle these two, right? So our division problem is going to be 11,000, and we'll go ahead and use the big 7, divided by 2,000, right? So we all know that 2,000 times 5 equals 10,000. And that leaves us with 1,000. Now we can't just leave this 1,000 here, right? We need to do something with it as our remainder. So we have 5 whole tons, right? So we're going to come down there. Now this can be the tricky part for students, right? And that's finding out how to write their remainder. Now if we look up here, we see that 2,000 pounds is equal to 1 ton. This is where they kind of need to use a little bit of common sense and their experience with fractions. So if 2,000 pounds is 1 ton, they need to know that 1,000 pounds is equal to half a ton, right? Or 0.5 of a ton. So if we come back over here, we see we have 5 whole tons and 1/2 or 5.5 tons in total, right? So students need to understand and think about what the whole is and then what the remainder when they divide means when looking at that whole. Right, so if we look back down here, it kind of gives us an example. So 5.5 tons, that would be moving a smaller unit into a larger unit. All right. Let's just try one more example, and we will use inches and feet because that's pretty simple. So if we have 3 feet and we are turning them into inches, right? We all know that there are 12 inches in 1 foot. So if we notice, the measurements are lined up again, right? Inches to inches, foot to foot. So since we're moving from a larger unit to a smaller unit, we're going to go ahead and multiply, right? And they're just going to circle this right here, and that's going to tell them their multiplication equation, right? So 3 times 12 is going to give them 36 inches, right? So 3 feet is equal to 36 inches. And then we'll just flip that right back around. 36 inches into how many feet? So again, we know 1 foot equals 12 inches. And our measurements are lined up, feet and feet, inches and inches. This time we're moving from a smaller unit to a larger unit, which means we need to divide, and our division problem is right here, right? 36 divided by 12. 12 times 3, 36. No remainder here, right? So we have 3 feet. So I hope this helps a little bit at home. Again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And that was measurement.